Morning guys, this is Captain Screech from Aruba Bound Charters, based down in Aruba. Today's tackle tip, where I'm going to show you how to create a hook set for a trolling lure. This is the trolling lure we're going to be creating a hook set for. I'm going to show you how to do that. Alright guys, in order to create a hook set, this is what the items you're going to need. First and foremost, a lure of your choice. You're going to need a fishing line. I'm using 200-pound monofilament. You're going to need a piece of wire, single strand. This is what I'm using, it's 130 pounds. You're going to need a hook. This is a 9/0 southern style tuna hook for Mustad. It is adequately sized to the head of the lure. You're going to need crimps for the monofilament, a crimping tool for the crimps, and an optional set of scissors. Okay, to start off with, this is how I like to do it. Take the monofilament, pass it through the crimp, create your loop. Okay, this is an optional part. Some people like to do it, others don't. You take a lighter, you burn the end of the monofilament to create a mushroom. Doesn't have to look pretty, it just has to function. This is to lock the monofilament at the end of the crimp. When you pull this close, loop, this is where your swivel goes. You crimp. Always crimping monofilament, you start from the side where it's closed to where it's open. When crimping, you have to find the adequate size in your crimping tool for the crimp that you're using. I'm using 2mm crimps. You always leave a gap at the end to flare the line. That way, not stress it, cut it, or have it break or anything. Crimp it as tight as you possibly can. Open. As you can see, there's a flare here. It's not straight. It's not pinching the mono. As you can see here, on either side of the crimp, it is flared. The line is not being pinched. There's no pressure points. You cannot cut it. That is the proper way to crimp monofilament. Finish loop where your snap swivel is going to clip. This goes to your leader, your wind on, whatever you're using on your rod. This lure is by Jaw Lures. It's called a bill collector. The color was suggested to me by a few of my friends in Cape Verde. This is one of their killer colors. Now what I do is, since I created this loop already, the other end is where the hook is going to be. You feed the mono through the middle of the lure, the hole. Feed it in, pull it out. And this is where we're going to start making our hook set. For the hook set, you're going to need 2 crimps. Put both crimps on, pull it through, and then you grab your hook. Put the line through the eye of the hook, and then the crimps. Now this is how I like to do it, so I can start figuring out how long this section needs to be before I crimp. So as you see, this is not correct. The hook is pretty much all the way out of the skirt of the lure. I'd like it to be a little bit closer into the skirt. So I just have to readjust this by pushing a little bit of this mono back. And again, verify the length. If you look close, the end of the skirt is pretty much where the tip of the hook is going to be. This is how I like to rig my lures. If you're fishing IGFA, you might want to do it shorter where the skirt is more into the bend of the hook, more in this section. Because if you catch a wahoo or a toothy critter, barracuda, kingfish, whatever, it'll cut the skirt. And if any part of this hook is outside of the skirt, for instance, if the skirt afterwards looks like this, you're no longer qualified for an IGFA record or for a tournament. Now, this is the proper length that I like to have this. I'm going to grab the single strand wire. Okay, so you're going to take your single strand wire, you're going to bend it in half, like you want to make a hairpin. don't want to close it all the way, but you want to make somewhat of a loop pinch right here. You're going to feed your wire through the eye of the hook, just like the mono was. And after you pass it through your mono, not crisscrossing them, but twisting around each other, you feed it through your crimps. Making sure that both the loop in the mono and the wire are going to be simultaneously pulling on the eye of the hook. You do not want to have more pressure on one or the other. You want it to be spread out between the both. Close this loop. Make it nice and tight. There you have the first. Now you grab your second crimp. Making sure your wires are not twisted around each other. You want to keep them parallel to each other. And that the mono, they are between the two strands of mono. You do not want to have them wrapped around like this. You want to have a piece of mono on each side with the wires in between. You're going to put the two pieces of wire inside the crimp. Start sliding your crimp down a little bit. And then feed the second piece of mono in the other side of the crimp where it's supposed to go. This is what you're going to be left with at the end. Now, before you start crimping, again, verify. Some lures this might not be able to happen, but others you should be able to do it. Pass the two pieces of wire in the lure head, just so you can get your reference for your length. And here you go, you check it. My lure skirt is in front of my hook tip. I want it like that because I do not want to have these skirt sections wrapping up around the tip of the hook or getting stuck on the tip of the hook like this. So that's good. Remove your lure. These two pieces of wire, you're going to have to cut them down to length, as these are too long. As a reference. Got it. Now they're all the same length. Okay, before you start crimping, just verify everything is tight. Your two loops are pretty much at the same distance as each other. Like I said, you don't want to have one holding more pressure than the other. You want it to be spread out between the two. If the wire is farther up, as you can see here, than the mono, just pull on the wire, pull it down, push it down, get into the same position as the mono, and then begin to crimp. Same deal. You start where you're closed, and you come down to where you're open. So where the line is looped back in, that's where you start first. Again, flaring the line. Put in the right hole, crimp. Move over, do a second crimp. Same deal, leaving a flare. This is your first crimp of the rig. Okay, you slide up your second crimp from where it was all the way to the other one. Now you're going to grab your hook in the bend. You're going to pull and twist at the same time, creating X's with the mono on top of the wire. You want to have X's with the same amount of length between each, so you don't want to have one bigger than the other. You want it to just twist, look really nice, really neat. Keep twisting, twisting until you reach the end. Now for this, sometimes you may need a second hand. If you're lucky like I am, I have somewhere I can hook the hook and hold it. I can put pressure on this line with one hand, and I can crimp freely with the other. Now, most people are going to say you need to have these two crimps parallel, like this. It doesn't make much of a difference when you're crimping it. Bring this up to here. You're ready to crimp. Remember to leave a piece of part of the crimp flared. Press down as tight as you can. And that's the finished hook set. You gotta crimp it one more time, but that's what you're gonna have it looking like. Again, leaving a flare. And that's ready to go. Now, the reason why we do this, if you catch a wahoo, kingfish, barracuda, anything with teeth, even a shark on the lure, it'll cut through the mono, but since the wire is between the two mono and it's crimped in the crimp and it's tight, it's in between there, it's not going to come off. There's one last piece here that's missing, piece of shrink tubing. This inner diameter of the shrink tubing has to fit the eye of the hook, just like this. See? Fits perfectly. You're going to ask, how am I going to get this on here? Well, just use the hook bend. Cut it down to size. What you want is for part of your crimp to be exposed. This way, in case if you forgot or if you're unsure, you know that you see your flare, you know that you crimped it. And also, this way, over time, you can see if the crimp is starting to rust out or corrode or fall apart. You know when you need to change it. You're not just guessing. So, grab your lighter. Do not point your lighter with the flame towards the mono. You burn it, you ruin your rig. Point it towards the hook. Kind of hold the hook in a position, but try to keep your line parallel to the bend of the hook. This is a torch, not a regular lighter, so I gotta do this kind of quickly so I don't burn the shrink tubing. Melt a little bit, give it a second, continue. Do the other side. As you're melting it, you can always adjust before it dries to make sure that it stays the position that you want it to stay. And there you go. That's a finished hook set. So, as you can see now, like I said, tip of the hook is behind the skirt. I have my hook semi-exposed. I have my wire in between my mono here. Toothy critters are not going to cut this off. And on top of it, I like this rig because the line is pretty stiff. This is a rig that I saw from a gentleman in Madira. This is what he does for blue marlin and billfish. And because they have some wahoo over there, they implement the wire like this to help mitigate cutoffs. Could happen, but a lot less chance so long as it's back here. Obviously, if fish were to grab this entire lure, grab the entire lure up here by the head, pull it down and, move this away and grab it up here, it could cut it off, but the chances are very slim.